Brian, how are you this morning?
Doing awesome, man. Really, really happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
I'm so excited, man. I'm going to tell this story because I was wondering whether I should or shouldn't, but I thought it was too good of when I actually met you for the first time. So we're alumni from the same college, and I was sitting there. It was 2009. I'm graduating. No one has job offers at all. Like everybody, like St. John's. What do we normally 98% placement?
Correct.
And I think it was completely inverse. 2% of people had jobs.
Yep.
And I was a salesperson looking for $1,000 a month, and I had interviewed twice with you. Absolutely jived with your energy, your personality. And you looked at me and you're like, dude, I want to hire you, but you're not going to be good at this job. And I was like, crushed.
Yeah.
So why don't you explain to people what you were doing then? Cause it's wildly different than what you're doing now. Yeah. And I think it's just an interesting way to launch off of the conversation.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, the stories are fun. And those are moments like that when I don't forget it either. Cause you sit back and you're like, dude, this is an incredible spot to be in, but Ryan has so many things he can do, and this is probably not the one that's been most successful for him.
And what was the job?
Yeah, so I was at the time we owned a CPA firm, and so we were traveling across the country working with hospitals, working on their taxes. And so we always laughed because hospitals don't know taxes because they're all not for profits. Tax people don't know anything about hospitals, and so it was a great field to be in. We had really a lot of fun. Did a lot of good things for hospitals out there. But what we would do is we'd literally download an entire hospital's patient accounting system. So I would we would take it and flip it. We had 50 million lines of data, which is not a big deal today, but that was a big deal back then.
Right.
So we'd have all this data and we'd sit for hours in our conference room just analyzing the different trends. And our sole goal was to find out where the government, Medicare, Medicaid had underpaid our clients. And it happened all the time. And we just had to find it. And so it was a matter of going through the volume of transactions. So I remember sitting there with you. I'm like, dude, it'd be fun to sit in the conference room with you analyzing data, but
if I could sit there long
I'm
enough,
not sure we're going to sit there long enough. And clearly I didn't do fantastic. That wasn't my best spot either, but we just knew we were digging for and really loved helping out these hospitals. And so we worked with the biggest hospital in the country, Florida Hospital down in Orlando, Florida, and probably the smallest, in Weirton, West Virginia and places like that. So it was a great field to be in. But that was one of my upbringings.
Oh, it's so great, man. So let's take the listeners back to how you got into tax and accounting. Cause now you're in real estate and we're going to get to how, what your guys' unconventional approach towards real estate, where you guys are deploying the funds and why, but how you got into tax. Cause Brian, when we were catching up, you explained how you got into the tax and the accounting firm and from the kind of the bigger shops. But you made a couple moves that were, might not look obvious from the outside. And that's what we want to dive into is how did you make those moves? But how did you land into the tax world?
Yeah, no, it goes back ways, obviously, but my parents owned two small businesses growing up. They had a lawn care business and a retail feed mill. If you'll have the little gray elevator that are in all the small towns. And we were just always business. That's what we talked about as a family. So we did. And so when I went up to St. John's, big plug for the Johnnies and the Bennies, I was going to be a management major, and one of the professors said, you can do a double major, management and accounting, in just 4 years with just a little bit more. And so I, being a simple mathematician, 2 for 1, that seemed to make sense. Said I'll never be an accountant. But yeah, I went through school. I actually loved accounting, though, to be candid. I loved doing it. Got to the end of it. I graduated in 2001 when, it was when anybody with a beating heart was getting hired as an accountant. None of us knew Enron was about to happen and WorldCom and all those things. And so
you both graduated in wonderful periods.
Right? I know, right? It was, it was great. I laughed, and within 6 months of me having my job. So I graduated, went downtown Minneapolis at KPMG. It was a great firm. Got hired by another Johnny in their tax consulting practice. And that was what I did. I helped businesses find areas they'd overpaid their taxes. And so it was a great 3 years I was there. But met a lot of great people, and that was when the sideline to it is what really starts where we're at today. Because I moved in with my brother Kent, and I don't think the wheels on my car were cold from arriving out at St. John's. And he's like, let's buy some real estate. Let's go. Let's do something. And I'm like, all right. And he was making a ton of money at the time. He was a sales guy, and so he would send money, and I'd go buy houses. And so that's when we got our start on the real estate side of it. We were doing our day jobs. I was a CPA working at KPMG, and then nights and weekends we were out flipping, rehabbing, lease to own, anything we could do to get real estate and grow value in those markets.
What was that like, Brian? What, like with chat with your other colleagues who are just I mean, were they grinding towards partner 2,200 hours and you're sitting here going, hey, we got cash coming in and we don't have to work? I mean, I can only imagine like the disconnect as far as like what you're seeing, what's working versus what they're planning on doing for 30 years.
Yeah, no, it's probably a combination. I actually had a sign on my desk at the time that I got teased for, but I had put a sign up that said, I will do today what others won't, so I can do tomorrow what others can't. And really what it stemmed from, we were in the age of having of happy hours. And I mean, KPMG, they hired 54 of us that year. And so we'd go out to happy hour, hang out. And I did that as much as I could. But after that, I was headed up to Fridley to go rehab a house. And so it really was just, that was more of it. I mean, yeah, there was a few people that were grinding out, going for partner, but mostly it was just the social side of it. And, I got married young. My wife was awesome. She went for a master's, and so she was busy in school. And so that was how we did it.
So, and you guys jumped to start your own. So why did you start your own firm versus going right into real estate then?
Yeah. So in 2005 or six, I think it was 2005, I was 26 years old. The firm I was at, I just left KPMG. This is where our team, so I go fast forward back and forth, but Roers Companies.
Yeah, go for it.
I believe in teams so much because I was at this firm in 2003, 4, and I just didn't fit. I mean, they were a great firm, good traditional, 85-year-old company. But I was getting in trouble all the time for different things. I was not a culture fit, And
because you're going to be describing your firm now and in a little bit, so I got to understand, why were you the ugly duckling or the black jelly bean, whatever you want to call it?
So we were doing contingency fee, right? So you go to traditional accounting, they bill hours and they bill you for your tax return, and that's how it works. So my first thing business wise is I'd go into a firm, I would do contingency fee, meaning if I found $1 million, we got a $400,000 fee. And so I'd have projects where I would light it up, right? We would get $400,000 fee or $200,000 fee. And, the guy next to me is cranking on a tax return at $120 an hour. But then I would bust, right? So every once in a while I'd go out, I'd look, I didn't find anything. So I'd come back, there was a loss. And so I had partners who were like, hey, Brian, where's this loss here? You lost the firm $5,000. I'm like, yeah, no, I agree. But the next line
I made $380,000 last month.
The next thing down is an $88,000 write-up. Like, it's a write-up. And that's a $5,000 loss. And they were like, yeah, but Brian, we got to talk about this $5,000 loss. I'm like, guys, like, I'm not a detail guy. Like, I'll win long-term for you guys. But so that was the business side of it. But then I got in trouble. Like, I wanted to go out and celebrate his teams. I got in trouble. I made a bet with a guy that on some project, if he lost, he had to run around the office singing, We Will Rock You. And he had to do 3 laps around the office. And that landed me into the managing partner's office. Like, okay, Ryan.
Oh, come on. That's even a PG song.
I know, right? So, but that was the day I knew, like, when I got in the managing partner's office that day, I was like, man, this is not working. And so I went to the partner I was with at the time, and I'm like, we really got to roll this thing outside. And so it was a great fit. The firm was like, you know what? We're kind of tired of you guys, to be honest. And we were like, great. So we literally bought the firm. So I was 26 years old. I took on more debt than I ever thought I should. And we grabbed our laptops at the applause of the firm, moved next door, rented office space, and started up. And that was Anderson Roers Accounting, CPAs. So that was.
And was Kent? Was your brother involved in that?
No, it was a business partner I had that I had followed from KPMG. She was a partner there. Again, I believe in following people, leaders. She was an awesome teacher, hardworking, very smart, bright lady, and we hit it off. And I was probably more of the risk side of it because, of course, I was 26 years old. I'm like, dude, we can do this. And so we did it. And the quick story, we did really awesome the first year. And then our second year in business, I would say I lost more money than people believe. And my wife supported our house, paid our mortgage.
While you're paying off the debt, losing money, right? Yeah. That goes over well, right?
Exactly. And so it's, those are the cycles. And all during that time, we never let off the gas pedal on real estate because even to your point, you mentioned 2009, we sold a bunch of properties in 5 and 6 as we were starting the firm. And just because I didn't like the real estate market at the time, in 2009, my brother and business partner today was like, Brian, we got to start buying. And I was like, dude, are you kidding me? I mean, Bear Stearns just went down. This is
so
bad.
The collapse is kind of the downward spiral is starting to happen.
Yeah. So downward spiral is happening. I'm winding up the CPA firm. And we start buying real estate. And I'm like,
isn't that crazy, Brian? I had these guys. I don't know if you caught visibility of it. I interviewed these guys on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and they had bought like $250 or $300 million worth of real estate. And the analogy of Rob and Colin, they said, "You ever try to catch a falling knife?" That's what we were trying to do as we were selling our properties. Is like they literally had to turn in. He goes, "We had to turn in our Range Rover keys for a bike, and that we went from the penthouse to the outhouse." I mean, literally the opposite, like because of the timing. Crazy.
Totally. Yeah. No, and that's what, and I know you wanted, we wanted to talk about this, but if you want to do it now, I can, but like, as we fast forward at Roers Companies, we had a time period like that. But that's where, we started the firm in 2012. And it was kind of a great convergence. Kent and I had always wanted to work together. I tease him because he's more in the relationship sales side of the business. As you can imagine, I'm more of the systems operations.
However, you're about to say that you're the ops and systems, but didn't you tell me on our last call that, because I was telling you my story about knocking on doors when I was a copier sales rep and didn't know anything and just went to the tallest building, and you were cold calling for taxes.
That's fair. Yes.
So you, even though you're the systems guy, you were cold calling for taxes, which maybe just like the conversation you had with me in 2009, maybe you were in the wrong profession.
Yes.
And so let's go to, so you buy the firm. You're obviously, if your wife and you guys are having that conversation about, the losses and the debt payment, if you come out of that, so like what did you come out of that? How did the conversations happen with your partner? Because you make a big shift to real estate with your brother. So how did those conversations kind of unfold, and how did they unfold?
Yeah, the biggest thing at the time was I really wanted to wind the firm up, and I wanted to go more national with it. My partner, and again, an incredible lady, I think she was 60 or 65 at the time. So we were just in different worlds, right? I'm 35, she's 65. I'm looking to wind up. She has a great thing going. She wants to maintain it. And so I always say, this is the day you did things right. I went to her with the buy sell, and I'm like, hey, either I'll buy you out or you buy me out. I'll take either side of this buy sell. I'm like, I believe in this firm. I love it. If you want me to buy it, I'll buy it, and I'm going to do this with it. Or if you want to buy me out, and then I'll wind out elsewhere. And so she chose to buy me out at the time. And that was when I was, got really excited. I jumped in my car, drove over to Kent's house one day, and I'm like, hey, he's like, what are you doing? It's 4:00. I don't know, it was the morning. I think it was 9:00 on a Tuesday. He's like, I know you work too much, Brian. Why are you in my office at 9:00 on a Tuesday? I'm like, dude, I just quit my job. I'm like, I
got freedom.
I'm like, let's go. And so that was 2012. And we were like, hey, let's wind this thing up. And he had just got the firm going. My wife and I were his biggest investor in the first project. And so I was helping him out on the side, and so we jumped in. That was when we decided to do it.
So I love that, Brian. And, I want to pull from a couple concepts from the academy that I know you've gotten some exposure to. Like when we think about like so many entrepreneurs, they get to this point where I notice where they're like, I need something different. And I tend to find that it's more of the activities of the job, the things that they're talking about, the people they're working with every day, their job, not necessarily the asset. Because all the conversation happens like, well, don't sell your company yet because the asset, whatever it is. But like when people kind of get this, like it's like they're not jiving with their role and the vision of what the path that they're on. How did you start to think about that? Because obviously, I mean, you because you just said, like, what I heard you say is like, hey, I was wanting to wind this up and scale it nationally, but instead you take real estate in a completely different avenue. How were both of those ideas solving some sort of passion that you had?
Yeah, I always said I like people and I like numbers. And so the candid question of why to go from accounting to real estate was real estate had more relationship orientation to it, and especially the way Kent wanted to do it. And I totally respect him for that. But the real genuine answer to your question is I'm a big Tommy Boy fan. If you know the movie,
yeah.
I'm a big Tom Callahan said it best when he said, "You're either growing or you're dying," and that really is it. I mean, at the firm, I didn't realize at the time, obviously, but I look back, I'm like, I just wasn't growing anymore, and I love pushing things hard, being gas on, gas pedal. Just you can never imagine what you can accomplish unless you push on it. And I will say the team around here, that's probably their biggest stress, because we had joked about is enough ever enough? And it's not about the money, it's not about the wealth, it's not about the number of buildings. it's just fun, like pushing things, doing things you never thought you could do. And so that was the
That's
biggest
so
thing
cool.
at that time. I knew with the direction that my partner wanted to take the firm that we weren't going to push the gas pedal that I had. And I'm like,
Oh, so
for
cool,
her, it was
Brian.
an academic thing and she could be smarter and better. And that was great. And I respected her for that. But I'm like, I want to go put me in front of hospitals. I think we could take this thing national. We should hire another 30 people. We could have an impact. And that's what it is probably as I would, I just impact on people, I mean, the
Oh, cool. That's
impact
so
you can
cool.
have out there is just so much more.
It's very helpful, Brian, because, we talk in the academy of growing wealth, having fun and making an impact, kind of living in the middle of those. And a lot of times, like when we entrepreneurs are talking to our buddies about like, should we move on? And like, what you said, I think has a lot to do with it. I talked to one of our clients recently, very large business, finally hired a president, making millions of dollars in EBITDA. He's like, dude, I'm so bored. I'm like, I got to figure it out. And I'm like, so he's trying to figure out his next thing, even though the machine's running now. So I think it's so important to be self-aware, like you're talking about, because then I think when people don't become self-aware, like you're talking about, then they feel that trappedness that you probably experienced with or you've heard from your buddies where like, I got to get out of this because they just feel like so suffocated from it. So what did Kent say then? So you show up, you're like, hey, well, let's do this. So like, how did those conversations, he's got a job at this point, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, we laughed about it because we'd always wanted to work together. And I always teased him because I said, you can sell more in one, meeting than I can perform in a year. And so I always told him like, we got to do a product that has like an infinite volume to it. And so his idea was, he's like, look, we've been doing this real estate on the side for years. And so we're out rehabbing houses. And then Monday morning we'd show up. In my world, I'd show up at the CPA firm. In his world, he was a financial planning world. So he would show up and he was doing seminars and talking about how to grow wealth. And he's like, people would come up and they'd be like, what do you do? He's like, well, I wholesale ETFs or mutual funds or annuities. And he had done all the products. And we're like, okay, so what are you doing with your money, Kent? Well, I'm doing stocks and bonds. And they're like, what are you really doing? All right, so we do real estate inside.
Yeah, right.
And so
how are you actually making your money?
Exactly. And so he would tell them, and then people would be like, oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. If you ever need money or if you ever want an investor, like I love my money there. And so Kent would say, it's like, you hear that, a couple thousand times and you get an idea, right? And so that was his idea.
Yeah, it's like, hey, like, no, I'm trying to, at the seminar we're here, so for AUM, and over here, you're giving me money, and I'm,
yes.
like, yeah, here's your sign, right?
So that was what we went for. We're just like, at the end of the day, there's always people that want to invest in real estate. They don't have access to it. Yeah, you can buy a REIT, but we all know that's watered down. There's 16 levels of, middle people in there that are pitching it or selling it or asset managing it. So we're like, let's just go direct. And so that's what we started day one. We're like, let's go directly to investors. And so we went, we chuckle now, right? Went to an investor and said, hey, we want you to invest in a product. We've never built an apartment building. We've never operated an apartment building. And you're the first investment. Do you want to invest? And we fortunately
trust us.
We fortunately got a few people on board, and we raised the first project. I think it took 6 months to get that money raised, to get $1.5 million raised up. And but that's where it started. We started investing with investors right alongside of them. So they would pool anywhere from 100. Now it's 100 to $1 million, but $100,000 to $1 million. But people pool their money in, and we build institutional scale. And that takes you back kind of to your first question of growth. And that, our joke was, yeah, we could do 4plexes and then 8plexes and then a 20plex and keep growing that way. Or we could just bite hard, dig into our relationships, fund up equity, and then we knew we could put people together. And that was the thing we knew we would do. So rather than build a small building with 1 or 2 people, let's build an institutional sized building that you can get scale. You can hire a manager, it's efficient, and somebody, in New York City or somewhere else wants to buy that building for a really big number. So that's really the advent of it.
So you and Kent are sitting there having these conversations, I can assume, right? Like, hey, here's what we're capable of doing. So how did, obviously you're being brothers, you know each other very well. Give us some insight on your guys' relationship. Obviously you have a kind of a clarity on the difference of roles and how that works. But when we talk about jobs versus there's the equity and these assets, and how did the structure work that you guys were putting together, and how did that structure align with what you guys, the scale you guys thought you could hit?
Yeah. It's probably a cliche answer, but it's trust. I knew Kent would perform. I knew he'd work harder than anybody else and he'd never quit. And so that's really it. From the days of we were booking planes to fly to our properties, putting it on credit cards because we didn't have the money. And Kent's like, I think if we do another 10,000, I can get this investor on, or, and I'm like, all right, dude, I trust you. You'll get him on there. Let's put it up. But that's the biggest thing, just growing up together. We knew each other. We finished each other's sentences. We challenge each other, as anybody around here can attest. We don't always agree, but we always commit, and I'll be sitting in the meeting with him. We'll battle head on of whether we're going to build this or do that. And I'm like, all right, I agree. Your spot's the right position. I'll commit. And so that's the biggest thing, just knowing that he'll always be there, knowing we'll never quit, knowing that we'll push through those hard spots, and we all try and make the right decision in the spot.
How do you take that trust that you and Ken have and distribute that as a cultural norm throughout your team?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a lot of directions. I mean, the first one, you referenced the team, and you said it earlier, is that, I know, by the way, and I try to be quiet. I don't want everybody to hear this, but I mean, I've never run a 250 person company, right? Like, I'm not the best at that. I'm awesome at starting things, pushing hard, doing this. So we've brought in a team to operate that. I mean, and so that's, I mean, our exec team and our senior leadership team are incredible people. They've worked really hard. They've been smart. They've done other things. And so, like, we put them in charge, and we're like, go get it. Like, we believe in you. You're better at this than I am. And so we trust it. And so that's where, and that goes down, we did an exercise around here of what's your best day. What's your best day when you're at your best? And, Shane Lefebvre, who works with me, and he's on our exec team. He's like, my best days, it goes back, and I don't know how many years ago it was. You guys believed in me. We went and did a project up in Fridley, and we couldn't put it under a technical legal contract. So we had to put $400,000 in the line. We had to kick out all these retail tenants because we were going to push it over, do an apartment building. He's like, you believed in me, and you just told me to go do it. And you checked in, but I wasn't babysitting and so it's just like, he's like, that's when I was at my best. And you showed that to me. And so that's how we run the team, and all the way to the investors. I mean, I look at the investors, I will show all the pro formas, the models, the market studies. We have it all. Like, we are as dialed in as we can be on everything. But I was like, I'm like, at the end of the day, you're really invested in us. Like, do you believe we can do what we say we can do? Because anybody can put together a pro forma. Anybody can put a number on there. I'm like, you're looking at us and saying, do you believe?
But then do you trust the pro forma, right? Who's going to be executing those beautiful numbers that just go perfectly up in 45 degrees, right?
Exactly. No, and that's it. So it really is a big part of just trusting people and knowing what they're doing.
How have you guys ever been challenged with how you trust first?
Well, we probably trusted the commodity markets a little bit too much years back, but yeah, I mean, obviously individual wise, you trust people in that, and they're going to run off the rails every now and then. And, if it's the right people, they learn, and those are great lessons. I've never yelled at anybody for mistakes. But there's times when you trust a little, I guess you would say too much. And, we have had, I mean, as business leaders, we always should try to move faster on things. And I heard a great phrase from Chris Carlson, who's an investor and a friend and a great man.
He was. I just republished his podcast actually 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He was episode 201, and I was like, everybody's been talking about private equity so much. I'm going to repost Carlson's podcast. No joke. I was in Vistage with Jim Glomstead as second in command.
Yeah, no, he's awesome. What Chris just said to us, this was I think 2 weeks ago. He's like, when people show you who they are, believe them. I was like, whoa.
Is that where I got that damn phrase?
I don't know. I'm giving it. Maybe you gave it to him, but I'm definitely
no, because I heard that a while ago, Brian, and shame on me, and that has bit me so many times, and that's actually why I asked, as trusting too much bit you, because I love to trust first because life is just personally more enjoyable for me. But then it's the whole verify thing, and like, when do you believe them? Right. And here's maybe more of a clarifying part of the question is, when you want to trust first and you need to believe people when they show you what their real colors are, I've personally been victim of ignoring it because I'm on track towards my vision and I don't want to deal with the setback of like, hey, this person's probably not the right fit or not the right culture. Like, have you ever struggled with that?
Yeah. I mean, we've had, you always have those spots, and, we're in spots where we're looking at like, oh man, or even like, I'm going to look stupid, right? Like, I hired this person, I put him in a leadership role, so I'm going to keep making it better. And I think that's one of the things we fall into the most is you're almost worried about your perception or what you've done. And so you want to make it right. You go too far. And so that's been our
Mm.
biggest thing. And we had a situation probably 2 years ago where we moved in and made a big leadership switch. And we were prepared for all the fallout and all that. And at the end of the day, we got more pats on the back of like, we respect you more, we trust you more, we believe in you more because of the hard decision we made. Because people understand those aren't simple decisions. So yeah, that's
It's
usually
so
what it
true,
is.
man. Every single time I've ripped the Band-Aid off, people come up and be like, it's about time, Ryan. And
Yeah.
it's like, God, you're just sitting there floundering around by yourself as the leader. Like, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? Well, everybody sits there and judges, and like for the right reasons, right? And it's just like, usually you make the right decision. It's usually too late in my personal experience.
Yeah, and I think what it gets to, and you love this as the people person you are, but it's just such a cultural thing, and that's what we've been really working on lately to define. Because with the hiring markets, as tough as it is to find people today, sometimes we're kind of flexing and not changing, but adjusting who we are. And so we've made a real concerted effort, literally in the last 6 months, of like, let's define our culture. And everybody's like, oh yeah, we know who we are, and I'm like, I want it written down. What is it? Tell me. Wow, it's one of those things you can see and you can feel, but you can't touch. Totally agree with that, right? But let's write it down. And so we've been working, we brought some tools in and some resources to really define who we are. And I won't bore you with it on here, but we had a really cool tool. Like, right, we're family oriented, we're a family business, we're clan mentality, we're all a team, but we're competitors. We want to win out there. We want to achieve, we want to do this. And so what are we more? And I mean, even for Kent and I, and you asked it earlier, like, we're brothers, man, we don't talk about anything personal. Like, we get together, it's like all business, all what we're doing, all where we're going. And I'm like, is that great? Maybe it's not the healthiest thing, but that's what we are. So
But if you enjoy it, then you don't have to apologize for it.
No. And that's what we want to do. Like, we want to achieve. We want a team that comes in and every day they want to be like, we want to be better than we were yesterday. We want to accomplish more. We want to make more money for our investors. We want to, so like, that's what we've been working on, is just really defining who we are. And then we're trying to be unapologetic of it. Just saying, here's who we are. And the team that's here, they are it. Like, you're fine. You're awesome. Let's keep going. But let's define who we are. So the people that come in, they don't get here and a month later, like, whoa, what did I sign up for? We're like, no, this is who we are. So
that's very helpful, because I think defining culture is a very difficult thing, but the nuances of like when people show up, how they dress, how they talk. I mean, it's just all those nuanced things that paying attention to them, then you can actually change them. When I think about, being a 250 person team going back to 2012, that's some serious growth. How have you and Kent been like when you guys said, okay, hey, we're off, we're going to start doing this, what was the original vision, and how have you modified the goals as time has been going on? And the kind of the context is like, are you pushing the goalposts off while you're having fun, or like, how are you reassessing what that BHAG is and what you guys are trying to march towards?
Yeah. To be candid, the goal and the vision is exactly the same. It's people and numbers. It's having fun in business. And really about our investors. So the goal has stayed the same. The candid answer is we've struggled because we kept setting a 3-year goal. We kept accomplishing it in a year. And so to your EOS concept, which we bleed EOS at Roers here, and we think it's one of the top things that have made us who we are. But we set our BHAG in 2017, and we said we want, it's a BHAG, right? Like, what do you dream of being someday? We're like, oh, wouldn't it be great to have 10,000 units? I think we had like 600 at the time. And like, oh, how much real estate? Oh, let's have 2 billion. Wouldn't that be awesome? And well, at the time, I think we had 400 million. So those were like our goal posts. And then we got to last year, we had to reset them because we literally hit on the same closing. This is super coincidental fun. On the same closing, we crossed over the 10,000 mark units, and we crossed over the 2 billion of real estate in January of 2023. And we weren't set to hit that goal until the end of 2025. So 3 years early, we hit it. And we saw it coming, but it was super fun. Same closing, clicked us over both of those.
That's congratulations, dude.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. A couple comments on it. One is I just got done reading the book 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. I don't know if you've come across that book recently, but highly recommend it because it kind of talks about, I would say, like what you are doing. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a fascinating concept, Brian, where like if you have the 10X, the 80% should fall to the wayside because it's not going to get you to that 10x. Have you guys adopted that, or is that kind of, how does that mindset reconcile with what you guys have been doing?
Yeah, I haven't read the book. I've heard it referenced. I got to get to it. But the biggest thing is just the EOS model for us, just keeping us, especially as entrepreneurs, keeping those guardrails on you, keep you marching forward so you don't get distracted in where you're going. And I think that's just been truly instrumental to us, that you get that path. And I think that's part of it. I always love what Bill Gates said. You always overestimate what you can do in the short term, and you underestimate what you can do in the long term. And that's been for us true in time after time. And so
you're staying focused.
Yeah. And
so then the second follow-up question to that is, as you've been accomplishing these goals so fast, people numbers, and like what I'm trying to unpack is like how you're explaining to the team, hey, we hit your goal, we're just going to put a new goal out there. Like there could be a set of culture or people where that gets exhausting. And then the question of, hey, what's this all for, comes into play. So how do you balance the numbers and the people?
Yep. Yeah. It's really been, we've pushed teams really hard, and we do get that feedback every once in a while, when is enough? And my true answer to that is, I think I want to be the guy that just pushes you harder than you thought you could go. And so I want you to look back and say, man, I don't want you to look back and say, oh, I could have done more here. I'm like, I want you to look back and be like, I never dreamed I could do this. I could accomplish this. I could create this. So that's our goal with it. And so, but we worry. We set a really huge goal in 2022. And obviously none of us saw the interest rates and things like that coming. So we set a goal of 24 closings, and we whiffed on it. We hit 16. And I tried to portray the message like, I was so proud of the team. I'm like, we accomplished a huge feat by getting to 16. So that's great. Pat yourself on the back. I know we didn't hit 24. And so we're setting up this year already. We set up a goal as 20. And we're saying, oh God, with interest rates going where they've gone, the real estate's changed. Like, let's just be aware of that. And so it's all right if we hit 18. It's all right if we don't hit what we set out to, because goals are set for a reason. They're set to be lofty. They're set to be things that you really dream of accomplishing. So for us, that's been trying to manage that. And we try to make it in a very tangible way. And so I'll show the team, like, look, this is the goal, but this is how we think we're going to get there. Like, here's the closings that are lined up, or here's the number of units, and it's all on a spreadsheet. And that's what I believe is that, people are so afraid to model it. I'm like, look, at the end of the day, when you model it, you can see how it's going to happen. The reality is it may happen differently. We all know that, but you got to put that assumption in so people can see that path and how they can accomplish it.
Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying the interview with Brian so far. I had to interrupt to give the call to action, and I just couldn't resist because of how funny it is that Brian interviewed me for a finance job, and he said no because he didn't think numbers would be my thing, and here I am doing a commercial about numbers because Brian didn't hire me, and now we're both talking about finance. So I think that there's one common theme between Brian and I is that we both really care about a plan. And if we project out the plan, so Brian being in real estate, he's got to be projecting out the equity value of the real estate investments for his investors, and they got to work that plan and they got to communicate that plan. That is exactly how you should be running the business. And that is exactly what we did not when we had our family business, and I wish we would have. And as we actually got close to the end of before we sold our business, what I noticed is that with the good numbers, the conversations that I had to have that were hard with the bank or with other suppliers or vendors was way easier when we were constantly dealing with our AP and our AR and the cash conversions. Like, all that stuff was extremely frustrating and time consuming with no visibility when we were running the $20 million business. However, when you put the numbers to it, you're just going back and talking to everybody based on what you think is going to happen, and then you reconcile it against the numbers about what actually happened. And the one thing that I learned from my experience going through that is you might not always be right. You're most likely not going to always be right. However, if there's a plan and then everybody works that plan and then we only deal with the deviations from that plan, most people, if the intent was well grounded in trying to work the plan and people in the plan were wrong, most people have unbelievably huge amounts of grace. So I just watch the tension, the conflicts go down. If you build the plan with the clear numbers, you can work the people and spend the time on the people that you want to, so you don't have to be just a numbers organization. So I think that the discipline and the numbers and the clarity in the plan allow you to work the people and the relationships like Brian's talking about. So if you want that, I'd say go check out the Intentional Growth Starter Kit, as I always say, so you can see how I project out the value of a company with the 3 financial statements. So if you had a clear plan like that, can you imagine how powerful it would be to manage your culture and manage all of the stakeholders within your organization? So apologize for the slightly longer commercial, but I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I hope you check out the Starter Kit and enjoy the rest of the interview with Brian.
Very fascinating. I feel that my brain works very similar to yours because, and I think this will get into, we were both like kind of salespeople, numbers people, and both didn't land in tax over a long period of time. It's like when you have those numbers out there, it's like, then it's like, you said something very fascinating is people are afraid to do that. And I think it's kind of the same kind of fear, Brian, of like people stepping on the scale. It's like, now I have to deal with this.
Correct.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, is like when I've had really hard decisions to make, like partnership buyouts or like making an investment of the rock star that you didn't plan on, you couldn't afford. That's where I defaulted to saying, okay, how much do I believe in what's in front of me? And then the people around me. So like you have also gone through some hiccups, I can only imagine, overall between 2012 until now with interest rates, 09, all that kind of stuff. So what was like when you were sitting there faced with, like, I don't know if you ever bounced any checks or if you had some questions of where the payroll is going to come from. How did you reconcile the short-term pain to that long-term goal? Like, how did you mentally think about that through conversations with Kent, your team? How did you handle that?
Yeah, it's always, it's about just figuring it out, I guess. But I was trying to think about that. We had, this is where you start to feel old. I'm like, man, we've been through the .com bust. We went through 09. We went through COVID. We're going through current interest rates. And for us, we went through an oil commodity market out in the Dakotas, because that's where, one of our starts was where we learned how good we are is building housing for oil workers. And so we built apartment buildings out in Western North Dakota. We were going gangbusters. We just were putting on the line, doing it. And all of a sudden, one day, oil markets turned. And so, I guess it's just always
less than like 13, 14 or something like that?
It started down in 14. And I'll never forget, we went to our banks, right?
2 years into your deal, too. So it wasn't like halfway in.
Correct. It was, we had, I think we did 13 buildings out there. We still own 9 of them today, by the way. But we got to, also, we saw the markets turn. We knew it was a supply issue. We knew we had a problem. So we went right to our banks. And we go to people, we're super transparent. We're like, hey guys, we got a problem. And they're like, oh, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Summer driving season. We're like, no, this is going to be bad, you guys. This is a supply issue. It's going to take at least 18 months. We're going to need help. You're going to need to be there for us. They're like, don't worry about it. So we started.
As you continue, how do you deal with the fact that you're telling your bank that the bank should be concerned? They're like, no, you're fine. What kind of confidence? What's that do to your mindset?
Well, you don't know at the time, and you're like, maybe I'm missing something, right? But like, we started conserving cash day one. So 2014, we conserved cash. We made a lot of money that year, but we didn't put a dime, and we literally saved it all in the buildings. And so then it took through 2015 until we burned through our cash. And we went, every morning I'd call my dad. He's like, do you talk to your banks? Talk to your investors? I'm like, yeah. And so we always pick our phones up. And that's where, like, I still have my investors. We have our cell phones on our business cards. I'm like, I pick up my phone. When people call, if you want to know what's going on, we'll answer you. But so that's what we did. We were very transparent. We were like, look, here's the problem. And so we modeled the problem. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. Like, here's some ideas. And I always remember there's a banker that told us, hope is not a plan. I'm like, I got it, as he's threatening to take my house. And so,
I hope I'm going to pay my loan back, Mr. Bank. Is that okay?
Yeah. And we're like, totally. So here's a model. Here's what it looks like. They're like, you think those buildings are going to go to 50%? I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm like, I think it's going to get bad. They're like, okay. So what if we start now? And so we did get really good participation from our banks in those days, but it was working on every bank. And that's what we talk about. Failure always leads to success. We totally failed, man. We shouldn't have over-concentrated in that market. We shouldn't have trusted the oil markets like we did. We made a couple calls that we should have done differently. And so we came out of there, and I always say, the moment it was December 23rd, 2015, I think, when everybody was prepping for Santa, right? He's coming, checking their list. Kent and I had a call with a bankruptcy attorney. And obviously I get a little emotional. I talk about
The
it.
wrong Santa.
I know, right?
You don't want to be tight.
What we were checking was how much would we conserve in our houses when they took our houses. I mean, that was the discussion we had. And we're like, this thing, we can't outrun it. Like there's not enough capital out there. There's not enough residents. And so we're like, so you ask, what do you do? We sat down, we're like, man, at the end of the day, Kent and I looked at it. I'm like, we have one of two options. Either we go through bankruptcy, button it down, see what we can save as personal assets, come out of this. Or another idea is blow the doors wide open and run wide open to see if we can outrun this problem. Because
like coyote, what's you Wile E. Coyote?
Yeah, Wile E. Coyote. And that's what it felt like too. Because I'm like, Ken,
run to the other side.
And that's where the relationship comes in, numbers and people. I'm like, Ken, I'll go out to North Dakota. I'll work every loan out. We'll do everything we can. But I need you to open the doors wide open. You need to talk to every investor you can find. I don't care if it's your neighbor, your sister who you got to invest, your parents, like everybody. Like we need new projects, new markets. Now we look back, it's only 400 units that we have out there, but we had 400 units out there. And so we did, and I tell people around here, I'm like, man, there's days I'd get up in the morning and I'm like, there's no reason to get up. I can't win today. Like the bank's coming in on us. Our residents are moving out. It's North Dakota. Like if there's no oil job there, they're going back to Texas. And so we were like, there's one foot in front of the other. Like it's trusting God, it's trusting our country. I always say and this, you're probably getting really rambling, but I always respect our veterans because I'm like, man, those guys went and fought for our country to put us in a spot that we can feel things like this, right? That I can feel how are we going to survive this? We can fail, we can succeed. And so that's the moments I think you just lean on trust, God, relationships, family, everything of like, we're going to go one foot in front of the other. And activity breeds activity and opportunities. So,
amen, brother. However, that is rough. And I can say that from personal experience because I remember it was a $240,000 payroll every 2 weeks. Yeah. And it was Tuesday. The bank wire needed to happen on a Thursday night and we had zero funds. And we're walking on Tuesday and this hawk, Brian, comes out of the sky and lands on the handicap sign that my dad and I are walking by as we're walking into the front door.
No.
And we're like, huh. And literally, we're like, what in the hell are we going to do? We're so screwed. And at this point, I'm driving all over for purchase orders so I can sell them to the bank for the factoring. And we find out, Brian, that our CFO 7 years ago had put a lien on a business owner's building because they didn't pay their copier bill. And we got a wire for $80,000 because the guy sold his building that day. But when you say hope is not a plan, it kind of worked that time. Yeah. So it's like we kind of both talk out of each side of our mouths. But I'm curious, man, because it's so hard. Like when you're going through that and you said you're not able to wake up because you don't know if you can win. How do you deal with that? I mean, I know one step in front of each other, but you're having conversations. So here's all the things that I think of going through my head of. It's my identity. It's my reputation. You guys are raising money from family, friends, your sisters. And so it's your identity, your reputation, it's your job, it's your retirement, it's your spouse who's betting on you. How do you, am I making you stressed right now?
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to put myself back. I think maybe it's ignorance. I don't know. But yeah, it is a spot to be in. I mean, Katie and I had the discussions and Kent and I had the discussions. But I think there's obviously an innate belief that something can work out. And maybe it's just a simple belief that inactivity is not an answer. Not doing the right thing is not the answer. And so, we had those moments of payroll, like you talk about, or like banks that were owed things. And we're like, God, this is going to cut us deep. But the right thing to do is to pay the bill, And so I think sometimes it's just going on the right thing. And even if we were going to crash and burn, at least I could look the investors in the eye and there's no way I was going to say I didn't try. And I went down without a fight. And so that's probably part of it. And the other part is just that belief that you can figure it out, you can get there. And I do, and now having been through some of those, I really do. We've got a situation out in Milwaukee right now with our firm, and our leaders are dealing with it. I'm not even dealing with it. And I'm like, how you doing? I'm checking in them. They're like, man, I don't know how we're going to come out of this. I'm like, you know what? I believe you will. Here's where I've been through. I know you will. I'm not stressed at all. I'm like, but you're going to define some moments here in yourself. I'm like, you're going to figure it out.
I'm not stressed, but you're going to have some lessons learned throughout this process.
Yeah. But that's what it is. I think it's just the belief that you do the right things and you will come through it. So, and we leaned in on people, we had to ask for help. We went and set up a debt committee. We brought in, the biggest investors, the smartest people we could find to help advise us. We hired a debt consultant. We didn't have any money, and by the way, the first meeting, I'll never forget, he patted Kent and I in the back, and he didn't say it's going to be all right. He said, boys, most people rebuild from this kind of stuff. That was his statement to us.
Thanks for that
Yeah.
encouragement.
I bet like your hawk, like it's the best thing that could have ever happened. Like when he did that, I remember being like, oh my God, like it's that bad. Like, but we again, and it's, the rest is history, but we never missed a bank payment. There's nobody we owed money.
That's awesome.
I mean, our credit is perfect today. And if you look at what we went through, like it was brutal. And like we refinanced the building during that time. Is July 4th. I'm out at the cabin with the family. Everybody's playing out in the water. I'm taking call after call. And finally I called them like, you guys, if you call again, I don't have more money. Like, because they'd forgotten the escrow, or they'd forgotten, we need 50,000.
It's gone. It's gone. I got a tube here I can sell.
I was like, guys, if you call again, I don't have any more money. Like this thing has to close because we're done. And it got closed, and everything turned. And that's where like just having those buildings, having that volume, having the team that we had. I mean, that's what brings you through it always. So
that's awesome, man. And I think, your people and numbers theme is very applicable here, because like when I was going through that, Brian, like without the numbers, it's hard for people to trust. Well, because there's no plan, you know what I mean? So like, I think it's both of those, like the numbers breed trust, and it's like there's a total circle in between of them, because then you're not lying to people. You're saying, here's what I hope to happen, and we're going to try and execute it. And then you're adjusting accordingly, versus people kind of thinking that you're lying to them over and over again because there's no proof that you can reconcile it against.
Yeah. Well, that's right. So much of it is just being real. And you said it earlier, but being honest about what's happening, right? Like we went out to our investors, and I mean, all of them are still, a lot of them are still investors today. And we're like, look, this is what we do, but it's what's made us who we are. When we go to our investors, we're like, hey, here's the numbers on this project. They're like, that's bad. I'm like, yeah, no, it's bad. Like, but let's be real about that.
Correct. That is exactly what it is.
And so then we did, like last year, we sold, the market couldn't be better, right? Last year we sold 9 buildings, I think. We made our investors more money than anybody. We were getting them 100 to 125% returns. They're cheering and high five, and we're like, hey, we did the right thing when it needed to happen, and let's all celebrate this together. But that's what we do. But those are the fun days that
And it goes back to your $88,000 write up versus the $5,500 loss. What's the average over time, right?
Yes. Well, and that's. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say is when I think about these defining moments too, Brian, and when there's I have this love-hate relationship with constraints. Because constraints, which not a lot of people are comfortable with these days, constraints, I believe, breeds innovation and very unique opportunities. And you and Kent have a very unique way of raising your funds. Mm-hmm. Did that transpire out of when you said, hey, like Kent, open up the gates?
Yeah.
Because the alternative is to fold the shop. Does that make sense? The constraints breeds innovation?
No, it's totally who we are. And that's where like you go back to why we started this thing, right? Like we wanted to work with investors, and that's the uniqueness to us. You reference it. We raise our money we do probably 20% institutional on our market rate side, and 80% friends and families, we call it. And people tease us like you got a lot of friends and family, because we raised $100 million last year through that channel. But growing up, we had these investors, and so in the hard days, I got to look them in the eye and let them know that I'm doing everything I can, right? In the good days, it's fun. There's nothing more fun. Like we sent out a distribution on our Rapid City project last week, and I'm getting texts from my parents, by the way, and other friends are like, hey, thanks for the distribution. Like this money matters to people, right? Like we're helping people with retirement funds, with legacy money, charitable causes. It's just what we're doing out there.
Well, it can break down, Brian, like, because I think for the listeners that may or may not, because like private equity and REITs and all the players kind of play the same, but I think it gets lost in the noise where it's, when you say 20% institutional, that's like the pension funds, the endowments, right? Like, so like why I'm pulling this thread is because that person that's managing $1 billion and you're like, hey, here's the return that I promised. They're going, thank you. That was your job versus the reward that you're getting so explain the 80% because it's a unique deal. What and how you guys are doing that.
Yeah. So it's literally individual investors. We joke with people. It is not, everybody thinks, oh, it's, the uber rich person out in Minnetonka or, one of those. It's your everyday people. Like it's people that have $50,000 to $100,000 to invest with us, all the way up to, I was on the phone with a family office this morning, but it's true, genuine people. And so it's normally 100,000 to a million is kind of our sweet spot. But so it's somebody that comes and says, hey, you know what, I've got enough in the stock market. My retirement 401k is full. I want a real estate investment. I want something direct on the ground. I don't want to put it in the market and I don't see it, or, news releases about Taylor Swift doing something and the market goes down, or, I just want something that's a real asset. And so that's what we have. It's a real asset. It's a capital gain asset. So it's taxed very advantage. And it's people that are just investing their money in it. So we raised $100 million last year.
So are they investing in particular?
Yeah, so 650 investors. We raise about $100 million a year. Those investors are what have built the $2.2 billion that we've done. And so, they've put in the money. They're the equity on the side of it. We invest right alongside of them. So we're always the largest owner, but we normally own 10 to 20% of each building. And then the investors own the other 80%. And so when we're crushing it down in Champlin or down in Chanhassen or Fridley, or, it's the investors. And I say that all the time. Like when I get to these city meetings, I'm like, don't pat me on the back. We have a group of investors that stand behind us. They're the ones putting the money in. They're the ones, but they're local business people, or they're executives, or people that have extra funds they want to invest directly into a real estate asset.
So 2 questions then. Are they investing directly in particular buildings, or is it like do you have different funds that you roll over? What's the structure?
Yeah, our investors have tended to be a little more owners. They want to know what building they're in. And so even we have ones that will put in every building, but they want to know, I'm going into Shakopee, I'm going into Rosemount, I'm going into Fridley, or, they want to know what they're going into, because then they drive by it or they go see it. And I'm like, you want to go tour it?
I'm part of that.
Like, yeah, no. Or like if you're going to, one of the markets that you're invested in, and a lot of times we show units, go stay in your building, see what it's like to be in an apartment. Like a lot of these people obviously aren't apartment dwellers or renters. They tend to be on their houses, but they go see their buildings. They tangible, they can see it, touch it. It's money that locks up for a while. So I say it's not as liquid as the stock market, but it just grows like this, because it's not that, swinging things the stock market does. It literally
you're paying
just
off the
grows
debt.
like
You're getting the tax advantages of the distributions and all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
How are you guys finding these 650 people that can generate $100 million in investments?
It's everything out there. We have a team of equity that goes out, mostly referrals. People that, I just saw a number. We did an investor survey, and 90% of our investors said we will definitely refer you to people. And so we're getting that response. And again, I'd love to tell you we're batting 1,000. We're not, as you already heard. But we just share with everybody the real truth and the information. And so even we've had investors that are in buildings that haven't done what we hoped it would do. They're like, I trust you. I believe in you. I'm going to invest again. Or I'm going to get my brother to invest. Or, I was hanging out at the country club and so-and-so was talking about this. I think he'd be a good investor for you. We're like, perfect. That sounds awesome.
That's awesome. So as you and Kent are crushing your goals and over 2 billion now, like what are the new goalposts, and like what do you guys aspire to have long term for your career? For like is there a specific deployment amount? Like what are the goals?
Yeah, the on paper goals, we had to increase it to 40,000 units by 2030. We increased our 2025 goal to 20,000 units, so we pretty much doubled all the original goals. But for us as people in his goals, I love, like, we're not planning to keep growing or keep closing, 20 this year, 25, 30. We're like, look, let's just hit a clip of closing 20 projects a year. That's what we believe we can handle as a team. We'll keep doing that. Personal goals, it's really, it's impact. It's what can we do with our teams? How are we operating our company? And so I can't say that I have this big financial goal. And, obviously we've probably exceeded anything I ever dreamed of. And so then it's not about the money, it's just about what we're doing, who we're investing for, how are we growing their wealth. And that's really the goalpost is that part of it. So it's really fun.
Awesome, man. And well, as I say, it's what I've resonated a lot with is Dan Sullivan. I'm bringing up his book again, because, in principle, when we talked about the vision, like, what do you want out of this? Is he talks about the 4 freedoms, and I just can't stop thinking about them, Brian. Is freedom of time, then freedom of money, then freedom of relationships, and then freedom of purpose. Where, like, if you love what you're doing, do as much of that as you possibly can without regrets, like you said, unapologetically, but also have the ability to, if you decide that you don't want your job anymore, or you don't want to be in this investment, have a plan so that way you don't blow everything up to get out of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is that kind of, I mean, do you resonate with that, or how to, like, it seems like you would based on the conversation we've had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny. Like we have people now that'll start saying, you know, you've grown this far and, you know, what's next, or who's going to take over? What kind of legacy? And I'm like, hold on, guys, I'm 40. I turned 45 now. Darn it. I'm 45 years old. Like, give me a break. Like, I don't need to plan that out yet, do I? But even like as you talk about it in that session and the awesome thing you put on business owners and that, I mean, it really is like we come in because we want to, and that's so principle bottom line. I'm like, I hope, and we said this at our corporate meetings last week for our team, like, I hope you come in because you want to, not because you have to or need to. Like, I get up every Monday morning. I'm so excited. Like, we have a full team meeting Monday morning at 8:30, and I can't wait to get in there. And then we go into our exec teams where we're making what I would call the hard and the probably not fun decisions, but I'm like, that team is an amazing team. I love being there, being a part of that, and seeing what they can accomplish. And that's really where it's at, is probably maybe that's the purpose and the goal, is just what can this team accomplish at this point? Because it's done with me. Like I'm over. I'm spent. You know, I mean, what
I was just gonna say. So if it's all about the team, Brian, what do you have any players that are gonna look at you and can go, "Hey guys, 20? Come on, man, let's wind this up and actually scale it."
They did. Our construction teams are the main ones. They're going. I mean, we started that construction firm just to really get control on prices last year and get control on materials, and that's been amazing for us. That thing's wound up. We're saving more money on construction. Our investors are getting a better deal. I now sign the paychecks of everybody involved in that, so you can imagine. So
wow.
If I need to pull a lever, and the biggest thing for our investors is, you know, like if there's a project that's not doing well, I can lean all of our profits, all of our stuff, because what matters to us is investments and that side of it. I don't need to make money in construction. So that's not my purpose. My purpose is the investment in these buildings, so we can lean in for them. But that thing's gone. I mean, if the numbers came out today, we'd be like the number 8 construction firm in the state of Minnesota.
No joke.
And so
wow.
It's quietly been just a little monster, but it's given us more control, you know, more ability to move what we need to push banks, to bet on the projects versus having to bet on other things. And so but that's probably, maybe that's playing what more impact, you know, now I got, you know, a bunch of more team, and they are the ones that are like, we want 25 projects. And I'm like, all right, I'll set you up for that. That's not what I need. But.
That's awesome, man. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I got a couple last questions. One is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should?
No, I mean, I think the fun things to talk about, you reference, are just people, culture, you know, why we do what we do. Our investors out there. I mean, we are always trying to get our name out there and, you know, make sure people are, you know, here's the plug, right? But if people are looking for investment.
Well, why don't you do it? Because that's one of the questions. So where's the contact information? How do people find you?
Yeah. So give us a shout. We're at roerscompanies.com. You know, I'm always available. It's my cell phone. Can I give that out? I probably shouldn't give that out.
Yeah, give it up. Yeah, absolutely.
952-210-7460. That's my cell phone number. And so we answer calls. We love getting investment discussions about it. But that's how we grow our business. You know, the more people we can work with, the more individual investors, we can keep growing this thing. And that's been the fun part about it, but it's really getting to investors and continue to grow that base and keep doing projects.
If you were to go back to the Brian Roers that was graduating college, going to KPMG, what would you say to him?
You know, I don't know that I'd change a lot. That's what's funny. I mean, I guess I'd say believe in, you know, you have the times when you probably aren't as sure about what you're doing, but just get that confidence, keep maintaining wisdom, do the right thing, which is what I feel like we've done, because it always works out in the end. And I do believe that.
And like your quote that you had on your desk, man, I think it's pretty accurate, right?
Yep.
Do the hard things today that people don't want to do for tomorrow.
Yep.
Last question for you, man. What does the word intentional mean for you?
Oh man, intentional is just, how do I use that? It's being intentional about what you do, right? Like, and I'm very intentional. Like you know, my wife and I talk about who we hang out with, you know, and so hopefully if you're one of my friends on this podcast, you're very important to me because we're very intentional. Like we want to hang out with the right people. And it's not, you know, who believes more, just do we have the same beliefs? Are we doing the same things? You know, in my world, are we pushing our kids to be better people? You know, and business wise, are we being intentional? We walk into a meeting, like we're there for a reason, you know, let's be honest about that and let's get to that. And let's deal with that. So I think it's just, again, it's probably going back to do the right things and really being, how did I not use the word intentional? Come on, man, this is hard.
It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's tough. So, well, and actually, I've had a lot of people giving me feedback like, "Hey, man, you've asked that 200 times now," and people kind of say the same thing, which is purpose with a plan.
Yep.
And it's just, I think it kind of goes back to when you and I kicked it off. It's like, why are people doing what they're doing? And one of my most fascinating, just like passions is like, why did people do that? Like, why did you make your decision? And so I think I think that quote, man, on your desk, it says a lot.
It's been fun, but it is, you're right on it there. I mean, the purpose and for us and I think for most people, it's all about the people. I mean, as you go to it, it's investors and being a part of it. It's our team. What can they accomplish? What can they do? And so it is, as I get back, so I joked and I said at the beginning that it's about people and numbers. And the numbers always work out if you have the right people or if you're surrounding yourself. And maybe there's your back to intentional. Surround yourself with the right people and it'll be great.
Amen. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been an absolute blast.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been fun seeing you, Brian, and what you've done too here. And I love you getting these messages out because I think they're so important out there. So thanks so much.
Thank you for not hiring me.